Joining us exclusively now to discuss Golden Week consumption is Gary Rosen, Greater China CEO at Accor. Gary, it's great to have you. I'm sure you had a busy Golden Week. Can you just give us a glimpse of really how the last week has been? How has been hotel occupancy, foot traffic, the like been?
It certainly has been a week of interest and certainly a week of excitement. So, Golden Week is always a great time for celebration. Interesting enough, when you think about comparing to last year and comparing to back to 2019, certainly this year we saw record volumes. And the data that's coming out, certainly we saw that translate into hotel occupancies. I think that's the piece really to celebrate and to celebrate effectively. Some of the challenging side of that is spending is necessarily not the same as we saw last year, which was a peak year for hotel rates. And certainly we see, we see that this year. Compared to 2019, depending where you are in the country, rates were marginally up. But look, overall, I think it's a positive story in terms, especially just for the sheer volume of people that were traveling over the last week, which is, again, down to the fact that when it comes to travel, this is something that people are always going to invest in. And I think the sense of, especially domestically, the sense of discovery and culture is so critical at this time of year in terms of travel.
Gary, just to pick up on, David here, by the way, to pick up on what you just said there, where do you see rates going then over the next 6 months to 1 year?
It's a bit hard to say, David. In terms of booking cycles are so close in China. Our average booking time is less than 48 hours. So I would say in terms of rates, depending where you are, if you're talking about leisure destinations, you're probably not going to see a significant amount of growth. If you're seeing in corporate and meetings, yes, you're going to start to see some growth coming back, especially compared to last year. So that's an exciting part of the business that we're watching very, very closely. I think the other thing, David, which is different and what we're watching very closely is that the trend in terms of where people are traveling to when it comes to leisure travel is shifting. And so people are rediscovering more remote places in China. There's so many UNESCO sites. There's so much wonderful nature travel and tourism that's really where we see a big part of travel, domestic travelers going, especially with the younger generation. And by the way, that's even the case as people are traveling over the border into Hong Kong. You're seeing a lot of that being driven by culture now, and interest in discovering Hong Kong culture versus historically what you may have said into shopping.
Yeah, I was going to say, tell us a little bit more about these, these new popular destinations. Right? We saw those pictures of people, staying in toilets near Huangshan just to see the sunset, for example. I mean, does it give you at Accor maybe more reason to maybe expand a little bit more domestically in China now?
Yvonne, just on that point, listen, we're betting on China. We just passed over 700 hotels in China this year. We see the growth in China, and what we're experiencing now is short term. There's no question that the growth is going to be exponential. You're still talking that China is still on track to be the largest tourism market in the world within the next 10 years. So there's no question, and Accor is betting big on it in terms of our growth strategy and our growth opportunities. When you think about where people were traveling to over the holiday, you're seeing a lot more into places like Yunnan province, and really in terms of, again, where the opportunity is for discovery of nature. It's a big part of it. When you think about extreme sports, that's a big part of it. People are really looking to discover their heritage, their roots. Food is a great way for people to think about travel, and it does really shape a lot of how people choose destinations. That's one of the wonderful things about being in China. So I think, as we look towards kind of the next couple months, David, you asked this question, we see, people have discovered skiing in a big way in China. Our ski resorts, when you think about snowboarding's become huge. We see that certainly as we come into the winter months, going to again be a big boom this year. So it's interesting that it's kind of learning as we're going, because the wonderful thing about China in terms of travel, it is so in some ways planning last minute, but people are willing to do things very spur of the moment, very excited to try things that are new, and that's helping to shape where people and how people are traveling. And for us as hotel operators, we're learning every day, and it's a great learning base.
Yeah, Gary, to your point, I mean, it's such an underappreciated story, the changes in consumer patterns, this pivot towards experience, right? Just to pivot, and just borrowing my own phrase, I want to get your thoughts on what you're seeing as far as business travel is concerned, particularly inbound travel into mainland China for the international business community. Are you seeing anything specific there?
Yeah, listen, what's great to see is we are seeing the rebound of that. There's certainly coming back. It certainly is taking time. And a lot of it is being driven in terms of on-flight capacity still into China. So I think that there's no question. We see a lot of the retailers coming back to China. And the reality is again, this is still China's still the best consumer story in the world. And so, again, from that standpoint, you have your companies that that have large footing here coming back. You see people that there's no question that companies are coming back. You're seeing meetings coming in now, which is great. We're incredibly excited, David, about the Canton Fair is coming up again, and we're seeing great numbers coming in for that. So we're very excited. That's a great indicator. You can talk about the large exhibitions coming in, and you're seeing that come in as well. So overall, the trend is moving in the right direction. We certainly would like it to go faster. But the great news is that we're seeing that trend move in a decent pace that we can say it's on its return.
Gary, I think we were joking just before this Golden Week that many people were not too optimistic about traveling. They were probably going to stay at home. And then we had this kind of stimulus blitz from policymakers, and people were like, I'm going to start booking my trip to Europe. I mean, have you seen sentiment change since we have seen this coordinated policy response from the heads of state now?
There's no question, Yvonne, it's a great point. There's no question. I mean, outbound, and you showed numbers, outbound is surging. And you can even see that. And as long as there are tickets available, people are purchasing them. I think what's interesting is to watch how people are feeling comfortable. And the thing is to always remember also, people have money. They have disposable income. They're saving. The savings right now are huge. So people are not afraid to spend, and travel is one of those areas that they are spending. So there definitely was an uptick again. And you can see that, especially when you're thinking about traveling to Southeast Asia, when you're traveling into Europe. We saw numbers into France, record numbers going into France for this holiday season. And what's also very, very interesting, Yvonne, is the Middle East. And just triple-digit increase in terms of the Middle East, because it's also a connector point into Europe now as well. And we can see that benefit coming through. And being the largest player there, we see that obviously as a major, major play. But I think, look, the sentiment overall, travel is something that is always on the forefront. So whether you're talking domestically, whether you're talking about people traveling outbound, there is no question that we're in a business that is something that is a business to celebrate, because people are always going to want to discover. And especially when you talk about Chinese people traveling, whether traveling domestically or globally, the sense of discovery, the sense of learning, culture is so critical. And that's always going to be the case, no matter whether you are an older generation or younger generation.